Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Peace and love, I'm Miel.
Coming up on today's report, Vice President Kamala Harris making a big announcement to help Black-owned businesses. Senator Raphael Warnock wants to increase the debt limit, and there are growing calls for a judge in Louisiana to step down the shocking video. We'll talk about it.
Also, the two men exonerated for killing Malcolm X. They sue New York, and Steph Curry, he continues to exemplify Black excellence. We'll tell you why and how.
Soulmates, we have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice and it's our truth. So let's get to it.
Good evening, Soulmates. It is in choosing love and beginning with love as the ethical foundation for politics that we are best positioned to transform society in ways that enhance the collective good. I just quickly wanted to start our show with words from a Black icon whom we lost today. Rest in honor to Bell Hooks, a woman who poured into our community in ways we can only hope to do here with this show. All right, our top story today, Vice President Kamala Harris and the U.S. Treasury Department announcing the release of $8.7 billion to help increase lending to small and minority-owned businesses and people living in poorer communities with limited access to banking. We have a little bit of the announcement here for you. Take a look.
Today, the wealth gap persists. Today, the homeownership gap persists. Today, access to capital is unequal. As one example, Black entrepreneurs are 3 times more likely to report that a lack of access to capital negatively affects their profit margins.
The funds from the Emergency Capital Investment Program, which, by the way, was created this year, they'll go to 186 community-based financial institutions. The Vice President and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen discussed the investments in remarks at the Freedmen's Bank Forum, which, by the way, was hosted by the Treasury Department. I just want to get to some quick numbers here for you, just about minority-owned businesses, just overall, because we can also spend plenty of time breaking down why this number is as it is. But just want to tell you that out of all businesses, 18.3%, this is numbers from the Census Bureau as of earlier this year, 18.3% of all U.S. businesses are minority owned. And so that is all minorities, all non-white owned businesses in this country make up for 18.3%. And of course, we know that number is also disproportionately low. And also the turnover rate, the success rate when it comes to our businesses, Black-owned businesses, specifically Black-owned small businesses.
Yeah, and I want to keep with the numbers. Black Americans represent between 13 and 14% of U.S. population, right?
Right.
Yet, Federal Reserve figures show they control just 4.3% of household wealth. And that's the problem when we think about that, right? We think about how can we build for a future, build for our younger generation so we can get a piece of the pie as well. But when you say that number, 18% of all minorities, that's pretty outstanding. That's not a good look, and we have to be better at that.
You know, I have a different way that I thought about this. Initially, it was like, wow, okay, there is some extra funds for our businesses that we've been just sitting on here. Where was this all along? But then I also thought, about someone on Twitter said something that kind of jogged my memory into something else, and it was like, okay, this could be great, but then also, you know, we always talk about the Black community being disproportionately affected, not being able to get loans at the same amount as like our white counterparts. But also, I'm wondering, is there a different way around this? Because is it going to help the Black and minority-owned businesses that are already struggling to give them more loans and then go into more debt? Because we're already in debt. We talk about college loans, and we have so many other loans for our businesses and just everyday life, people taking out loans. Does that help us, giving us so many more dollars in loans, and then we're still in debt versus maybe a discount on something, or maybe a tax credit? Like, there's so many other ways I feel like that could help the Black community and Black-owned businesses, Black and minority-owned businesses. But I'm worried that if we just shell out hundreds of thousands of dollars to businesses that are already potentially struggling, how does that help them?
Well, hopefully they will be passing out grants instead of loans, because you don't have to pay grants back, as well as forgiveness for the loans. I know right now with the PPP loans, they are offering a lot of forgiveness programs to where you don't have to pay them back. But I think more so, getting back to Vice President Kamala Harris, this is what the Black community wanted to see her doing from day one. This is why Black women pushed for her to be on the ticket, because we wanted to see her stand up for communities of color. And we know that she had been in the headlines. She had some shakeup within her communications department. And over the past week, we have seen her at the forefront of issues that, you know, the people who voted for her care about. So I think this is a good move for her, and I hope that she continues to stay on this path. Now, Senator Raphael Warnock is frustrated that the Senate found a way to pass an increase in the debt limit bill without any Republican support, but can't use the same mechanism to pass stalled voting legislation. Take a look at what he had to say.
We think it's so important that we change the rule in order to get there, in order to save the economy. Well, the warning lights on our democracy are blinking right now. And we seem unwilling to respond with the same urgency to protect the democracy that we have to protect the economy.
Now, Warnock pointed to a one-time rule change the Senate passed last week that would allow an increase in the debt limit with a simple majority vote. He said the Senate was hypocritical. And all I can say is, let the church say amen. It was the most hypocritical thing that, you know, the Senate could have done. And as we talk about how people are being arrested for voting rights, you know, they're at the Capitol. Like today, everybody is still, civil rights leaders are pushing for voting rights, but yet they could move the filibuster to pass something that is very dear to President Biden's heart. I think this is going to put a sore spot in Black voters as we continue to watch Capitol Hill ignore our cries for voting rights.
Yeah.
You know,
go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to hop in really quick and just think about how it must be being a Black man in this space, being a Black pastor in this space, and having so many communities that you represent, and them having depending on you so much, depending on you to make change, and have to fight as a Black man for something simple as voting rights. And I do understand what he says about being hypocritical, because we know that. We've seen that. We've seen the Republicans be hypocritical before. But I also feel like something like voting rights, as I've said before, yes, it disproportionately affects our community, the Black community, the minority communities, but also is going to affect a lot of Republican white people as well, older people as well. So I feel like at this point, we're at this meeting ground. Why can't we just all come together and do the carve out, like we said, and just take care of one thing, which is voting rights, because everybody should have free speech and be able to vote in America right now. It shouldn't be this big of a deal.
You know, it's interesting. This, at least the rhetoric surrounding this, is heating up, if at least outside of our state capitol, right? Reverend William Barber III, friend of the show, being quoted with strong words to Senator Joe Manchin, saying he lied to the country, and also saying he lied to the late John Lewis, saying he lied to him, speaking about that he cared about voting rights. And those are strong words. Those are some of the strongest words I've heard from an activist say to Manchin or Sinema. And so we're going to continue, especially, you know, you see what's happening with our lawmakers. We're going to continue to see if the push outside, if it moves anything.
I agree. And you think about it, all eyes on the Biden administration. But at the same time, I feel like the Republicans are sitting there with their arms folded and said, we're not budging. And they're not worried about any repercussions, but the Democratic side has the upper hand in this situation where they can say, look, if you want to get it done, we're going to do what it takes to move forward. But I feel like the Democrats are hesitant because in the end, they feel it might bite them in the butt down the road. But do they have to continue to live like that on a daily basis? They have a lot of promises they have to keep. And we're going to get to that crossroad, and I've said it before, where they're going to have to decide, look, if they're not going to budge, we're going to do what we have to do to get these things pushed through. So we'll definitely see.
Yeah, and I think this was the last straw for them to bypass the filibuster, and we've been talking about this for months, and they did it last week. to get something passed that they wanted. And black voters delivered this election for Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And for them to ignore what we are asking for, I think it's going to really affect them in the midterms if they don't find a way to pass these voting rights before 2020 elections.
I agree. The House passed legislation on Tuesday to create a special office within the State Department to combat Islamophobia globally, as Democratic leaders sought to find a way to unify the party against anti-Muslim hatred while stopping short of progressive calls to remove Representative Lauren Boebert from committees for her attacks on Representative Ilhan Omar. Lawmakers passed the bill along party lines of 219 to 212. Progressives have introduced a measure to kick Boebert off committees for her Islamophobic comments last month, suggesting that Omar, one of the first Muslim women elected to Congress, could be a terrorist. This has to be taken serious. We can't let this continue. Action has to be taken. And Representative Omar, she went on to say there are cynics who would rather see us divided on racial, ethnic, gender, and religious lines because it suits their political agenda. But I believe as Americans, we must stand united against all forms of bigotry. And she couldn't have said it best. Something has to be done. Don't know if Boebert's going to be all the way out, if they can even take it that far. But if there aren't any repercussions, we're going to see more of this down the road.
Yeah, one term that she's used a lot, Romeo, like you said, is standing tall to bigotry. She put on Twitter that this was a milestone for Muslims around the world. She said this was a powerful signal that Islamophobia cannot be tolerated anywhere. Her last piece was that this might, back to standing up against bigotry, this might expose one to attacks. But again, like she said, stand tall, saying, hey, we are aware that this could put us at risk. We are aware that this is going to make us susceptible to attacks, but also I'm not afraid to stand up for what I believe in. And so, you know, we talk about representation matters a lot in the black community. Again, not the same talking about religion here, but just, you know, follow me. The black community, we look for representation and we want to feel included, and we want in the government to feel like we are cared about. And if this is something that her and her entire community cares about, it is something that needs to be taken serious. And I'm happy that it is being done here with this.
If we remember last week, though, Ayanna Priestley, she presented a bill that took it a step further and wanted Boebert's committee seats to be stripped. And Nancy Pelosi shied away from that because she was afraid of the 2022 elections. And I think that is the issue. It's like they never go further enough when we talk about white lawmakers when it comes to people of color, and how we tell you we feel victimized, we feel oppressed, we feel like we are being terrorized. And it's like, okay, but we're going to do what's best for our agenda. And it's never received on what we're saying the people of color agenda is. And I think that is going to be the problem that the Democratic Party has as we look at the 2022 election, is that we're not being heard, but yet we're showing up and we're voting, and people are going to get tired of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to touch on something Romeo said as part of the story. He said, stopping short of progressive calls to do more. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just a wonder, you know, obviously, you know, we've been told since the beginning that there was a worry about doing more, how that can be turned against them, which is kind of the same argument that we see when we talk about voting rights, when we talk about the filibuster, everything overall. And my question is there a limit to that? Is there a line? Where is that line?
Mm-hmm. I think we'll see it in the 2022 election. I think we're going to see it.
Okay. So Attorney General Karl Racine on Tuesday filed a federal lawsuit against far-right groups, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, over their role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The 84-page civil complaint, which also listed dozens of individuals, alleges violations of local DC and federal laws, including a statute stemming from the 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act, which targeted violent conspiracies. The complaint follows a similar litigation filed by a group of U.S. Capitol police officers and another suit by the NAACP and Representative Benny Thompson. Those lawsuits also draw upon the Ku Klux Klan Act, which makes it illegal to use force or threatens to prevent federal officers from carrying out their official duties. The lawsuit filed in Washington, D.C. based federal court seeks unspecified amounts of money, damages from the defendants for what Racine describes as restitution, and it is a great 84-page. I didn't get a chance to read all of it, first of all, but I did dive just a little bit. And so the first thing that came to mind when I thought of this was, it's about time. And so he put on Twitter that this is the first time. And so for me, I'm thinking all these lawsuits that we've seen, how come no one has attacked in this way that he's done it? Have we been afraid to do it? What is it that no one else has attacked in the way that he's done it before? And why is this the first time?
All right.
Let's stay on this topic here a bit. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the White House intends to commemorate the anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, though saying specifics are still in the work. You know, the president has regularly referred to the insurrection at the Capitol that day as a dark day in the nation's history and has praised the courage of law enforcement officers who worked to secure the building that day. And I want to talk about law enforcement officers because many people saying Capitol law enforcement officers should have been Times Person of the Year, saying, hey, they saved democracy, wanting more attention for them. And also, you know, we saw the change in the Capitol Police Department, of course, after this happened. And so also, you know, you wonder, you know, when you talk about commemorating that day in a good way, there's also the fear of the alternative, right? I'm curious, you know, are there fears coming up? But, you know, this just had me thinking about law enforcement and radical changes happening. And of course, also, you know, you all may be familiar, pretty big news today, the new leader of the NYPD for the very first time will be a black woman. That incoming Mayor Eric Adams is set to announce that soon. And also a black woman leading the Capitol Police Department, a department that, again, the president is kind of honoring. And you just wonder what type of precautions at the same time as they're honoring people, what type of precautions are they going to also have to take that day? And also thinking about the long-term effects on some of them who faced, you know, who had a horrible day that day. You know, we lost lives that day. We lost police lives that day. Yeah. People felt like, you know, they were seeing their department and their colleagues in ways that they had never seen before. It caused a bit of a split in the department. And so we're going to see what happens. But it's interesting because it's not a day that many are looking forward to at all.
No, not at all. I agree with you. But you think about precautions, right? 9/11, it happened on American soil. It took us by surprise. Our lives in America has changed ever since. Now we're being attacked by our own people. Well, they're going to the Capitol. So how do you think that's going to play out, right? How do you think about when January 6th comes around every year? That's going to be on the front of your mind, not the back of your mind, because you're wondering how, as a country, did we get to this point? You're also wondering, like, how those families feel about those police officers that were there that day that took their own lives. You know, whether it's because they feel like they failed us or failed themselves, like there's so many questions that need to be answered, and so many people need to pay for what happened on that day. And I can't believe it's almost been a year, and there's a lot more investigation and things needs to happen for January 6th.
Yeah, you talk about commemorate. I want to commemorate by seeing some justice with this January 6th committee and see people held accountable for inciting these people. And Romeo, you brought up 9/11, and remember how the Islamic community and Muslims were subject to racism, you know, being victimized by people in this country because they were looked upon as terrorists. Well, where's the same pushback for the individuals that did what they did on January 6th? It's like we're tiptoeing around it. Some of them are getting the gentleman, well, I won't even say gentleman, but the rioter that stormed Nancy Pelosi's office. I think he got like 2 years sentencing. But when they were looking for the Muslims, they just wanted to like throw them in a dungeon. And so this is what we're talking about when we talk about addressing racism in this country. It's not fair. It's not equitable. It's not equal. What's right for white people is not the same for people of color. And that's an injustice.